There we go. All right, great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here for the precursor to a possible long evening on Beaverton business, but we're happy to have everybody here. And this is the Land Use Subcommittee. So we have time until 5:30 to discuss the work that Miles did. And hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to review that. That came to us I think I forwarded it in an email March 25th. And tonight I'd like to talk about some, listen to what your feedback is on that. And also, as you recall, there were a couple of points that Miles specifically asked for some additional script, and I just crafted some information and sent that along yesterday. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to review that and provide some comments on that. So that comprises our agenda this evening to talk about the web pages that have been assembled thus far and to fill in any gaps. And I'll open it to the floor. Does anyone want to join in with some initial comments?
Well, I thought it was a terrific improvement from what's on there at this time. And real well done, Miles. It presents well, it's user-friendly. If I can use it, I think it's great.
Hey, Terry, you know, one thing we had to select on was on the intro on page 6, and we had option 1 and option 2. And I assumed you wanted us to make sort of a, if we're going to use what's there. And I don't know, I just thought option 1 sounded a lot simpler without scaring somebody off reading it. That's reading our introduction.
Okay, thank you.
I think we ought to sort of vote as whether we like option 1 and option 2. And there's another spot further down where on the definitions page, I think, where we can use the existing definitions that are in the land use handbook, or we can do our own, which I don't know if anybody really wants to tackle that. I'm sort of in favor of using the ones in the land use handbook, and as some new definitions come along, adding to them. But anyway, that's my. Other than that, I thought the others were written quite well. Sort of impressive.
Good, thank you. Any other thoughts about what the work Miles has done? Yeah, go ahead.
Just Gary Cook.
Hi, Gary.
I thought option 2 is, I think option 2 is a little better audience written, expecting who will probably wind up using this. And to that point, I think the last paragraph in that section, the development code also includes the approval criteria for development applications. I think that's what somebody using this would probably be looking for. That's a definition above that is frankly too long, and it's pretty legalistic.
Okay.
Or at least that's my take.
Okay, thanks. So maybe either simplify that or delete it, or maybe massage.
Yeah, well, the one that starts with page 13, option 1. I would just delete that, keep the second paragraph, basically.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then that in conjunction with option 2, I think, basically conveys the message. We've put together a handbook and it covers a lot of complicated things. And here are some of the things you ought to be looking for.
Yeah, and I appreciate it in the handbook. It used the text, and the land use process is very complex, which is certainly true.
Yeah, it is.
Any other thoughts from the group?
Just sticking with the page 13 section, in general, I agree with what Gary said. I think that just getting out that first part of it's, I don't know, I look at that and I get kind of a headache, where the important part is in that second paragraph. I think maybe the one thing I would take from the maybe the bottom part of that first paragraph, where it's like, it's fairly complex, the copies of the code can be found here, so on. Yeah, but some of the the legalese at the start, I think we don't. It says a lot without saying anything, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Start with maybe the development code defines zoning for land within the city and specifies procedures for various land use matters. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of the heart of it.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I think though, including something, like while the comprehensive plan describes general land use categories, because when I came at this, it was the confusion and the which takes precedence, I guess, between the comprehensive plan and the development code. Because there were things that I read in the comprehensive plan that then seemed to be contradicted by things in the development code. So I think at least mentioning the comprehensive plan is good.
On that, I didn't grab it, but there was a slide that Brian Martin prepared for, and it actually was, and he kind of skipped, he presented it last month, I think at BCCI, but he skipped over this slide for lack of time. But what this slide did was it talked about the overlap of the comprehensive plan and the development code. And I thought, so maybe if you're interested in that, I can pursue that with Brian Martin and see if inserting or attaching that graphic may provide that kind of, I guess the linkage that I think you're mentioning, and that but presenting it as an image rather than text. How does that? I mean, I could try that.
Right. As an example, the comprehensive code talks about livability of neighborhoods, right? And when there's a proposed development, that's where you're going to get pushback from people, right? Of this thing is horrible, it's going to reduce the livability of my neighborhood. And so that sort of feeling of, but it gets approved because it meets all the development code criteria. And so then people are like, well, the city doesn't really care about the livability of my neighborhood. They're going to approve everything. And so it's that, what does livability mean under the umbrella of the comprehensive code when it comes to making decisions about proposed development and land use?
Yeah, and I think that reminds me of a conditional use we had in West Slope. And because it was a conditional use, livability of the neighborhood, livability was actually a criteria when it came to a conditional use. So I think that linkage is a really, that's an important thought maybe to pass along, that actually can play into criteria.
Terry, I think Deborah makes a really good point, and I've seen it in more than one instance in the appeal process, where the appellant uses the comprehensive code to base their arguments on, and that gets shot down at Planning Commission because they look at the development code. Whereas when West Slope went to City Council, and that you start talking to city councilors about the comprehensive code, that resonates with them, and they're able to make decisions based on that. I'm not sure how we talk through that in a web page, but I have seen the same, not the mistake that Deborah made, but the same line of reasoning that Deborah used on multiple appeals, where they go before Planning Commission and they say the comprehensive code clearly says XYZ. And they say, but it meets the development code, so it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. So does anybody have any other thoughts about how we could present that complex principle in a simplistic kind of a fashion? Or maybe that's one we can, I don't know, chew on or something. But it obviously is I think a key feature to ensure that people know, they know what applicable criteria are and when not the comprehensive plan. Because there are occasions, like I said, when the comprehensive plan is actually called upon as a approval criteria, specific sections of it, but it's not in all cases. I don't know, maybe that might be one where there might be a video or something like that, where we could have a planner kind of explaining that would be for the high level interest folks who are really delving into the details about how applicable criteria, how the comprehensive plan may or may not factor into applicable criteria for any given land use decision.
Well, Terry, I think that depends an awful lot on the type of the type of request, whether it's a type 2, type 3, or type 4. Absolutely. And I suspect that a lot of these are going to be type 2s. The type 3 stuff should catch the difference between the comprehensive plan and the comprehensive plan and then the implementing ordinances, basically.
Yeah, that might be if we do decide to do like a deep dive video on that, kind of explaining that principle, I think it would be best to do it within the context of type 3 applications, because that's generally where that criteria would be applicable, like livability and those kinds of issues.
Yeah, particularly on a conditional use.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Any other general thoughts about the web page as the way it's as it's unfolded thus far? I see Rick has joined us. Hello, Rick. And Ellen, listening in. Cool. Okay, so we've had some thoughts on the additions to page 6 and to page 13. Any other considerations regarding, or any other folks want to weigh in on the intro on page 6, or did they come up? Anybody come up with their own intro? Okay. Well, let's take a vote.
I do like the comment, the add to both with the link in terms of questions, comments, or additions. I think providing that is important.
Okay, so that will go into whatever option we choose. Or okay, does everybody agree with that? Sound good? All right. We've heard sentiments on option 1 and option 2. Does anybody want to? Should we vote? Who wants option 1? Raise your right hand.
I recommend it. It's all raise my hand.
Jim and Eric and Rick. Okay, thank you. Who likes option 2? Deborah, Gary, and me, and
Garrett, yeah.
Konnette. So 4-3, we're gonna go option 2. Is that cool with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, Thank you. Okay, and I think we talked about the development code. Does everybody agree that, that this would be the next one on page 13, that we will simplify that and maybe incorporate one sentence about, maybe keep the, Deborah, if we kept the sentence, while the comprehensive plan describes general land use categories, the development code has more detailed descriptions of its categories called zoning districts. Would that, I think, satisfy the connection that you're looking for? Okay, all right. And then maybe, how about that next sentence? The development code also specifies what uses are allowed and prohibited in each zone. Does everybody want to keep that or do you want to delete that? Any thoughts?
Well, I think it's important in a way if, you know, and this has come in the case of U-Hauls, putting them in storage, you know, storage unit places, etc. And most of the self-storage units have gone in as a conditional use. And no matter what, the U-Hauls are not allowed in any kind of residential zone or things like that. We ran into this in ours, and I've never complained about them, but this self-storage unit is a conditional use in a residential area, and that they're renting U-Haul trucks out of there too, which is not in their conditional use permit, and I don't think is allowed. But they have a limit of 3, so I haven't made noise about it. But so I mean, I think it's necessary for people to know if somebody's going to do something. Just because you open a business doing something doesn't mean you can't branch into doing something else that's not allowed. So people need to know what's allowed by the code.
Yeah, and what's prohibited. Is that sort of your point?
Yeah. I was
having that that aspect in there.
Yeah, just like I said, U-Haul rentals are just not allowed in residential areas. And of course, if you're doing something else with the conditional use, the conditional uses are very specific on what can be done. And people need to know that. There was an actual case like that quite a while ago at the Planning Commission. U-Haul rentals out of a business, another business that really wasn't allowed. And they even on appealing it, they didn't win. So.
Okay. Well, we've, everybody okay with keeping that sentence in about uses allowed and uses prohibited? Good. All right. I see heads shaking. All right, cool. Thank you. All right. All right, let's go on to.
Well, we need to do page 22 at the end of the bottom.
Yeah, glossary. I mean, this is something that came up at one of our earliest meetings about acronyms we have and words that really haven't been defined. And I noticed the glossary there in the land use handbook has some of them. And I guess the thought was, is that comprehensive enough? Let me find my notes here. It had words like NAC, I mean, NAC, so they had to find that. It had BCCI, it had LUBA, Metro, DLCD, RTP, UGB, and UGMFP, which I don't even really remember what that is, but basically Urban Growth Management Framework Plan. That's a Metro document. So, is that comprehensive enough for folks, or are there additional acronyms or words that you think we should include in our glossary?
Well, can't we do sort of a combination? Use option 1, but add new words to the glossary as we come across them and know about them. I mean, we don't want to start from scratch on something that big, I wouldn't think. And a lot of the definitions would probably apply to the Planning Commission more than that. I mean, it might if we happen to have a development we're concerned about.
Right.
So I think it should be option 1 with look and see if there's additional ones that should be added.
Yeah, okay. And are there any that occur to anybody that you'd like to have included? I mean, for example, we didn't have the list of things like common, this is something that, think about this, maybe this is not the place for it, but somewhere. The commonly used acronyms when there's a public notice or a public notice sign. I think of like CU and DR and, you know, is that common language enough? Or do you think we should spend a little bit of effort to ensure that folks know those common acronyms that are used on land use forms?
Terry, that's where I grabbed the few examples that I had.
I noticed you did include those, yes.
Because if I drove by a sign and it says CU number, you know, 003-2021, I don't know what that means or what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking less of like the development code has a huge glossary already. And I wasn't going to go back through and redo that. But what are those things you might see on a letter or here at a meeting that the developer might say that you don't know what that means?
So I'm thinking about, you know, the graphic that they used at the land use forum, right? That had the, you know, this is what this looks like, an application with, you know, what all this means. A similar kind of thing with a sign, right? That here's the blue and white sign, and it has, you know, 4 different combinations of letters and numbers written there, to have a graphic that says, this is what this means. This means this is where you go to in the development code that is a part of this. Just to understand what the sign means. A similar kind of graphic to that big graphic that sort of diagrammed a land use application letter. So
are you thinking like using that as kind of a prop, and then we could have a list maybe of all of the different types of land use actions?
Yeah, I mean, in the land use handbook, there's a picture of a blue and white sign. And so just having that, but like with an example of here's something that you might see on that sign, and this is what it means.
Yeah, and that's the part that I need help with, is generating what you might see on that sign.
Yeah, and I think that's, yeah, because I noticed your signs and yours are blank, and that's cool. But maybe that sign plus a list of those acronyms might be a useful visual. You know what I mean? Like if it says CU, that means a conditional use. If it says DR, that means design review. If it says ZR, zoning, and then the rest is, but I like your idea. Then the rest is the year the application was filed, and then just a chronological number that was assigned to it. But altogether, that is a unique way of identifying a specific land use action.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, okay. How would we make that happen? I mean, is that a, should I talk to like somebody like Jana Fox or somebody like that? Or how would you like to accomplish that, Miles? Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I can ask them to take a picture of the next ones that they write up and send them to me for the prop. Yeah, that's not a problem.
I have a picture of the Southridge Park one on my phone.
Yeah.
I guess what I don't have or know are all of the acronyms, the options that of all of the applications that can be filed, What is this list of acronyms that they use to assign case files?
Yeah, I'm not sure that exists.
Oh, okay.
It might be just something that planners know or learn on the job.
Yeah.
I guess. I'll certainly ask. That's a good idea.
Would you possibly have a list of the various applications for filing fee structure?
I'll have to ask. I don't.
So if you go to filing fees, you know, zone change, plan amendment, conditional use, so on and so on. There's got to be an abbreviation there someplace.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some good leads. I can follow up with those and see what I can find.
Okay.
Maybe they do have a list and I just have never seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I know at Washington County we did, and it was on our fee sheet, but there's the fee sheet and then there's the like 2-letter acronym that,
yeah,
you know, where there's somebody probably has that back in their filing cabinet back in the good old days when you actually had written stuff, you know. But anyway, yeah, that would be, I think, helpful is a tool. And maybe that's not really a glossary. I don't know. Is that a glossary, or maybe that's that could be a new exhibit on our notice page, possibly. What do folks think? Where would be the best place to put something like that?
I could see it belonging in both places.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Really doesn't hurt to have things in 2 places, because if people are looking, once they find something, they aren't going to keep searching. And it makes it easier.
Okay. I think 2 pages makes 2 ways of communicating is better than 1. Okay, and if anybody thinks of acronyms, or I'm sorry, acronyms or terms that you would like to see in a glossary, I think, as Jim indicates, it can kind of be a roving project where we can add things as we see fit. Oops, and I've hit 5:30, so I will be very quick, Konnette, because you're, any other thoughts on the information on the appeals, where I went through the language of appeals on my attachment yesterday. That stuff, I literally went through the development code and I tried to write it as expeditiously as possible. I'm sorry, it's probably real mumbo jumbo, but believe me, the actual regulations are pretty mumbo jumbo. So, and I skipped the entire part where it talks about placing a notice in the newspaper. That's kind of, I really focused on when people would comment.
And I think, you know, just having South Beaverton and West Beaverton or West Slope look at it, since you guys most recently went through it, you know.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, anyway, I guess we've kind of run out of time, but please, we can meet again before our next BCCI meeting if everybody's interested, or please feel free to provide me with email comments in the next couple of weeks, maybe, so we can kind of wrap this up. I think we're ready to wrap it up largely. Does everybody agree?
Terry, do you have much more to go over? Do you want another 10 minutes or so?
No, I think unless I hear otherwise, I think we can turn it over to our Traffic Commission subcommittee. And yeah, it looks like you got some folks in the wings. So thank you, Land Use Subcommittee. Please read out stuff, give me comments. I love to hear from you. And we'll wrap it up from there and see you at 6:30.
And Terry, you'll send me your collection of comments at some point.
Of course, Miles, I did not CC you. I will certainly do that.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Okay.
Hey, Lani, if we want to stay on for BCCI, should we just leave or should